I'm back. Whoops. So do we have all the scholar librarian teams together at the same table? Okay, excellent. You're just doing such a great job with following directions. We love that part. So we have a couple of hours now for all of us to experience a Let's Talk About It program. And we've set this up so that you are the audience, you are the participants. I'm certainly aware that this is not your average general audience, and we don't pretend to be. But this is your only chance as the scholars and librarians to be on that side of this podium. After this, you're going to be back here speaking or running the program. So we found, the first one of these I went to was in 1988, and we've been doing them ever since because it does give you a feel for what will happen at a Let's Talk About It program. And after the session, it's about 2 hours, it lasts about 2 hours, then we'll have time for questions, questions and answers, continue to talk to you about your concerns about how to organize things, how you might want to do things, that kind of, this is the time for you to do that. And it's really good to hear questions asked by other folks because you may not even have thought of these things. So this works really well for you to hear what other people are thinking about too. Fred is going to model the way so that all of you will have this experience and you scholars will see one of the ways that a scholar might do a presentation. This demonstration program is just a template. Scholars bring their own expertise and interest and style and whatever their passionate interests are to their presentations. Librarians know your community. You will probably, because everyone will have to sign up to come to the program, you will have at least an idea of who's coming, kind of the demographics of your community, you know particular interests, and you will certainly know, for whether you're an academic or public, the larger issues that are happening or issues or interest in your community. And this is something that helps you to tailor this program so that it is meaningful for the people who come to the library. We are not engaging in role-playing. If there was role-playing, I would be at home on my screen porch in Raleigh reading a library book. This is actually just a demonstration of how Let's Talk About It program works. I know that all of you have read the book, as a good Let's Talk About It participants have done, and are eager to talk about this within your small group. And I look forward to hearing what you have to say. So we're going to demonstrate, Fred and I. It sounds like we could offer them a mortgage, Fred and Franny. Ew. Sorry about that. So we're going to demonstrate this, and you're going to participate. But you certainly take what works for you, figure out something else. You just want to make it happen for your participants, and there's no absolutely one way. There is a structure, and there is a reason for the structure. This was not, this has been around for 30 years, so then it's been tweaked, so there's a reason for it, but it is very flexible, and it's designed to help you make this happen for your people. So I am now going to transform myself into a real librarian. I've always operated much more like a public humanities director than ever a librarian, but for the next couple of hours, I hope you will support me in this. I want to welcome you to the Radisson Blue Aqua Branch Library of the Chicago Public Library System. I'm Franny Ashburn. I'm the Adult Services Librarian here at the library, and we are very proud that our library was selected as one of the pilot sites for the Muslim Journeys Let's Talk About It national project. We're pleased that you are taking advantage of this opportunity and excited that we'll all be here. Over the next 9 weeks, we're going to meet here in the library in this room from 10:30 to 12:30 every Thursday, and so we look forward to seeing you here. I know that you've brought your book with you that we're going to discuss tonight. Be sure before you leave today to turn in that book at the back of the room. There's a table where you can put the book. You can also check out, if you have not done so already, you can check out the book for 2 weeks from now. And be sure that you've picked up a series essay and that you have read that, because that will really help kind of frame this whole project for you. So those materials are available to you. There are this is the commercial part, there are 2 national organizations that have made Let's Talk About It possible in our library. They develop the project content, and they are funding pilot programs in 90 libraries and in 7 state humanities councils across the country. The National Endowment for the Humanities is funding Muslim Journeys Pathways of Faith as part of its Bridging Cultures initiative. Bridging Cultures fosters informed community conversations about the histories, the faith, and the cultures of Muslims around the world and within the United States. And our other national sponsor, is the Public Programs Office of the American Library Association, which focuses on libraries as community cultural centers and lifelong learning centers, and as an open forum for civil discourse. There's national support that's necessary to make a project like this happen, but local support is really essential for it to happen here in our library. We are very grateful to our Library Board of Trustees for their support in our applying for this grant. Our board chairman, Patty Van Tile, is here today, so we thank her for her encouragement. We thank our wonderful friends of the library for the refreshments. They're always so good about providing the essential coffee and cookies for any public program. And Lainey Castle is the president of the Friend. She's here today, so we thank her too. And I hope that you will check out the beautiful display of Islamic art objects that are in the library foyer, and we thank the Islamic Center of Chicago for setting up this exhibit. It will be there all during the 9 weeks of our Let's Talk About It series. So please join me in thanking everybody right now. My notes say wild applause. You did very well. There are many organizations and individuals who work together to bring this exciting and stimulating series to you for free here in your library. We hope these programs will pique your interest in the series topic and in the authors. And also on that table at the back of the room is a suggested additional reading list from works in our collection. I hope you'll pick up a copy of that, as well as some of the titles, and I think there are a couple of videos that the staff has pulled out. If you'd like to check those out on your way as you leave, that would be terrific. And please ask the staff anytime for any kind of help they can give you as part of this program. They're eager to help. So I'm also in charge of logistics for this program. Number 1, the restrooms are out this door and to your right. Be sure you pick up that copy of the series essay. If you haven't already done so, read it and reread it. It will help us all frame our discussions as we proceed. Be sure to leave the evaluation form on the table back there. We're asking you to fill out a very brief form at every one of the programs, and then we'll have a little more extensive questions at the end. This helps us in preparing the evaluation that we're required to, because this is a grant-funded program, and also will help us in planning future programs. And fourth, the agenda is introductory remarks. We're almost through that. And then our scholars presentation and a small group discussion, and then Dr. Denny will do a wrap-up for us, and we'll be done by about 12:30. So that's kind of the structure for the morning and the information that we're happy to share with you. Our scholar is the content expert. You're the readers. He's the content expert. And his job is to be our informed guide for our readings as well as our discussions. We are most fortunate to have the National Project Scholar for Pathways of Faith as our scholar for the series. Fred Denny's a native of Vermont and earned his A.B. in philosophy from the College of William and Mary, his Bachelor of Divinity from Andover Newton Theological School, and his M.A. and Ph.D. from the University of Chicago. And just to top off his schooling, he earned a certificate in advanced Arabic studies at the American University in Cairo. He's Professor Emeritus of Islamic Studies and History of Religions, having served on the religion faculty at the University of Colorado at Boulder from 1978 to 2005. His publications include a widely used college-level textbook titled An Introduction to Islam, and he's the editor of the University of South Carolina Press scholarly book series titled Studies in Comparative Religion. He served for 11 years on the board of directors of the American Academy of Religion. His long-term interest in Quranic recitation, in comparative ritual, and Muslims and their communities in the Middle East and in our country will be of special importance to all of us as we explore pathways of faith. We welcome him as our guide to today's discussion of the children of Abraham, so please give a rousing Radisson Branch Library welcome to Dr. Fred Denny.
So wonderful to be here and to be back in Chicago, too, where I lived for quite a while I was struggling through the university. And it's the same old Chicago that I remember from nearly 50 years ago when we moved here. But it's, I'm sure, has many changes since then. Much more traffic even now, I think, than back then, and other things, too. Well, I'm honored to be a part of this wonderful project, and I've so enjoyed meeting the people, Lainey and Patty, and so many others that we worked with beginning over a year ago for this part, and then now to have this fruition. It's so wonderful, and to see it, and for your work, Franny, so much. Okay, I'm going to start by giving a version of what the pathways are. And some of this you will read in part in the essay, and other things I've added and changed from an earlier time, so as to make perhaps a better oral presentation on this. And I think I better get my watch out here and have it so I can see it now and then so that we don't keep you too long and miss out on discussion. Introduction, then, to the theme, Pathways of Faith. This theme resonates with Islam's most important principle, following the correct pathway to spiritual fulfillment and success, both in this life and in the hereafter. Islam is the youngest religion in the extended Abrahamic monotheistic family that began with people who became Jews and later included Christians. Islam's beliefs and values may be traced back to the earliest roots of the Jewish tradition in the patriarchal age of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and their matriarchal partners, Sarah, Hagar, Rebekah, Rachel, and others. As reported in the book of Genesis in the Hebrew Bible, known by Christians as the Old Testament, and finding fulfillment down through many generations in the work of Moses, the Hebrew prophets, and Jesus of Nazareth, whose life and teachings inspired the founding of Christianity with its central belief in Jesus as God's Word made flesh, as the opening of the Gospel of John expresses it. Islam, whose name means submission to Allah, to God, has its own pathways of faith as laid out in the Holy Scripture known as the Quran, the word which means recitation which came from Allah through the angel Gabriel. And then Muhammad, who was illiterate, was with a perfect memory and was able to remember this and to pass it on to his companions. And he had this recitation coming for a period of some 22 years, from 610 to 622 of the Common Era. The revelations were revealed in a region where Jews and Christians were little known in Western Arabia and the peninsula, and polytheistic traditional beliefs were dominant. The Prophet Muhammad's own life teachings and personal example came to be deeply respected by the growing Arab Muslim monotheistic community. Through imitation and handing down in the form of oral reports known as hadiths, Hadith, how he addressed spiritual, ethical, social, legal, and leadership issues. Learning and obeying the monotheistic message of the Quran and following the Prophet Muhammad's own teachings are central to Islamic belief and practice. While the Quran, as Allah's direct teachings, is the supreme authority for Muslims, they also recognize their beloved Prophet's behavior and teachings as the second most important source for knowing how to live a righteous Muslim life in the community of faith known as the Ummah, U-M-M-A, the Ummah. Ummah is a word which is parallel to church in Christianity. It means community, and it means a faith community, and it's worldwide, and it's wherever anyone goes to be with Muslims, to be with members of the Ummah. Imitating Muhammad's way of believing and behaving is a major pathway of faith for Muslims. So, one of the things that Muslims get so disturbed about is when people insult the Prophet in any way, because they feel that they are being insulted themselves, because they are following his teachings and his life as the proper pattern of how to live. And so this is an extremely important dimension that the world needs to understand a bit, because there's a sense of an attack on the soul and personality of individual Muslims when this happens. It's very personalized in that sense. Muslims love peace, and they think that peace loves Muslims because God brings peace. Islam, submission. Muslim, one who has submitted. You hear a common three consonants there? S, L, and M. Can you think of another word that has S, L, and M? Shalom and salam, the same. For Jewish people and for shalom aleichem and salamu alaikum. Cognate languages, Hebrew and Arabic. If you learn Arabic, you can learn Hebrew once you master the alphabet. And vice versa with Arabic and Hebrew. And be able to write without having to put vowels in a lot of the time, because you know what the vowels are once you have the deal in your mind and in your heart. Okay. Islam shares many of the same basic beliefs and values as Jews and Christians, although it also has its own interpretations and additional beliefs and values and practices which make it independent of its older siblings, not completely cut off, but itself independent in that sense. All Muslims share central doctrines and practices, and that is something which one finds more likely in Jewish communities, but not as likely in Christian communities, where you have a lot of sectarian differences and denominational differences and so forth down through the centuries. Okay. All Muslims share then central doctrines and practices, and very important here are 5 basic doctrines and practices which are informally, not officially, but happily called pillars, the 5 pillars of Islam. the supports, the things that hold it all up. The Quran, the supreme authority, charts out a pathway to success. Now, it's interesting that the parallel to salvation in Christianity is success in Arabic. And this may include economic success and wealth, provided it is handled with an Islamically inspired stewardship by sharing and by giving to others as well. But also success not in the sense of material goods, but success as fulfillment, as satisfaction, as joy, as peace in one's heart as well as in one's mind and neighborhood. Success, that's success. So it's not, don't think of it as basically material, but as something that is an accomplishment. But it's an accomplishment made possible by Allah. And it's a reward. But it's also something that provides a necessity for continuing responsibility and accountability. So all of these things work together materially as well as spiritually and socially and in families and in life as such. The first pillar is the declaration, La ilaha illallah. There is no God but God, capital G, Allah. And the Muslim bears witness to this in what is called the Shahada, the testimony, the witnessing. The second part of the Shahada, S-H-A-H-A-D-A, Shahada, the second part is Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, of God. So, there is no God but Allah. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. This testimony, known, as I said, as the Shahada, is the closest thing to a creed in Islam. There is no elaborate creed with a lot of points, such as one finds in the Nicene Creed or the Apostles' Creed in Christianity. It's more like Judaism, which has a very minimalist sense of words. Both Islam and Judaism, I think, try to evade logolatry, which I learned about in seminary, which is the worship of words. I won't go farther on that right now, particularly the word made flesh. I don't want to go on that, but that is another essay. Okay. Now, the second pillar is the ritual prayer service known as Salat, S-A-L-A-T. Muslims are required to perform the Salat 5 times daily, if they possibly can. Early morning, noon, mid-afternoon, sunset, and evening. And if they can, gather together, even with one extra or two extra, or as a family, or as a congregation, that's wonderful. There's something important that goes with the Salat, as well as with other practices, and that is purification, personal purification beforehand. And that is done with water in a certain prescribed way, which we find out about from the Quran and also from the Sunnah, the Hadiths of Muhammad. And so purification is the first, in a sense, the first important ritual that Muslims always engage in before they do the pillars as such, or this or that. The Salat, again, I gave you the times of day. In addition, the Friday Salat is a congregational service, and it must be a congregational service, bringing members of the community together in a mosque, for example, which features a sermon, and the Salats of funeral and 2 eclipses, in addition to the Friday one, are also required. Okay. The third pillar is almsgiving, known as zakat. Once a year, a certain amount of one's wealth should be given for good purposes. There is in the law detail about how this may be done. The importance placed on ritual prayer and almsgiving in the Quran and other sources is a clear indication of the importance of the vertical relationship between humans and Allah through prayer and obedience, and the horizontal relationship among Muslims through the giving of one's wealth. Next is, in importance to worship of Allah, is concern for others, both individually and as a ummah, as a community of Muslims. Let me add also that the word zakat also means purification. I just talked about purity, the ritual purification, but zakat is a broader purification in that if you give properly of the zakat annually and regularly and faithfully and according to the law, your property is purified. So there is a ritual purification of your assets if you give away some of those assets to help others. And I think that's just a very interesting thing. It's something that often is not mentioned in books and so forth, the notion of purification. But my professor, the great Pakistani American Quran expert, used to insist that we in his graduate courses knew such details as that, because that's what's in the heart and minds of Muslims, is not just, oh, okay, here's some money, but this is something that's related to one's whole development and one's whole being, not just in selfish terms, but in the sense of strengthening the community. Okay, Sawm, S-A-W-M, or the month-long daytime fast during the holy month of Ramadan is maybe the best known of Muslims' religious acts because it goes on for a whole month during the day. This is the fourth pillar, and it is one of the most sacred times, the month of Ramadan. During the 9th month of the Muslim lunar year, those who are observing the fast are forbidden from eating, drinking, anything, smoking, and having marital relations, intimate marital relations. In addition, they may not chew or swallow any external matter or take medicine through any orifice, unless there is an urgent reason for the latter things. And then that is okay according to the law, and there's quite a bit of discussion of such things. So it's not cruel to observe these strict things if one is in good health and able to do it. But if one is not, then Allah provides a way. It is recommended that one eat immediately after the sun has set on fasting days. One may then eat another lighter meal before the next day of fasting begins, preferably just before dawn. The fifth and final pillar of Islam is the Hajj, H-A-J-J, the pilgrimage to Mecca. It is the most dramatic and developed of the Muslim ritual practices. The pilgrimage to Mecca during the holy pilgrimage month of the Hajj, Dhul Hijjah, is held annually. It is required once in each Muslim's lifetime, but only if he or she is legally an adult, as well as both physically and financially capable. If you are not physically or financially capable, you are not required to perform the Hajj at any time during your life as a Muslim. While knowing the pathway to Muslim faith enunciated in the 5 pillars is fundamental for all Muslims, serious historical differences have divided the Muslim community into 2 branches, the Sunni majority and the no less important Shiite minority. This division occurred over a disagreement about how leadership would be handed down once the Prophet Muhammad no longer led the Ummah after his passing. The Shia contend that he designated his son-in-law, Ali, as his successor, with a corollary that the head of the Muslim community should always be a descendant of the Prophet. The Sunni movement coalesced in the 800s, about 150 years after the Prophet's passing. Sunnis believe that authority over the Ummah descends from the Prophet, but not through his natural heirs, through his companions, who knew the prophet most intimately and were given the task of compiling the Quran. And that went on for a period of 150 or so years. There's a lot of new literature being discussed on how it was brought together, and I can't get into that here, but it was something that the community did in remembering what the Quran is and its wording, and also how many people can vouch for that, that it has been passed down in their families in this way. So memory has so much to do with this. The authority of the companions, those who followed Muhammad during his life as prophet, is, as Sunnis believe, transmitted down to the present through decisions and opinions of the learned, respected scholars who have succeeded them. So it becomes something that's going down in history. Sharia today is interpreted by mullahs, religious officials, in conformity with these traditions, a practice that often results in a rather literal interpretation of the Quran, but not always. Today, about 85% of Muslims in the world are Sunnis. The largest concentration of Shia, the remaining ones, live in Iran and Iraq. I'm going to now discuss a word that we hear a lot and that there's sometimes discomfort with, and let me share this with you. A key Islamic foundational term is the Arabic word Sharia, S-H-A-R-I-A, which is understood by Muslims to mean divinely established law. The basic source is, of course, as you know, the noble Quran, as Muslims often refer to their sacred scripture, Al-Quran Al-Karim. Second only to the Quran, and you know that from just now, tonight, or today, is the Sunnah of the Prophet with the hadiths, his teachings and what things he did. Islam, like Judaism, is a religion based very much on divine law. Not entirely on law. I don't want to think of it as legalistic all the time. There are those in any religion who are legalistic, but there are those who have a spiritual way of being flexible in terms of consult issues and so forth. And one finds that in Islam too. Like the Jewish tradition, Islam has developed many pathways of understanding and applying its own legal sources to more moderate and even liberal viewpoints, although those are less common than a more conservative way of judging. The ancient Sharia term, the Arabic word, also means, quote, the way to the water hole. Now that's pretty important in that part of the world. The way to water. Although the Islamic Sharia law does not mean that literally, there is poetic resonance in the older meaning that aids Muslims in feeling the security of Allah's water for the protection of all life. A passage in the noble Quran cites Allah as declaring, quote, we, the divine plural, it's not pluralism, it's got God and so forth, but we made from water every living thing, end of quote. This is something that Muslims include very frequently nowadays in their ways of thinking about ecology and about the world and its needs for water and for safe water. And so many people in the world do not have safe water, and so many really do not have very good access to water in Africa and Asia and other parts of the world as well. Following the Sharia is the central pathway for Muslims in the legal sense, pathway. But the varied Sufi mystical ways, but I should say that again, I want to repeat that Sharia is a word that means way. Way to the water hole, I said, is an old way of thinking about it. But it is a way, so it's a pathway. It's the main pathway of faith, particularly in the visual and formal terms of law. The varied Sufi mystical pathways of faith also should be mentioned, although principally they are in general compliance with the Sharia as the greatest. Also, they have their own pious spiritual disciplines known as tariqas, T-A-R-I-Q-A, tariqa. This is an Arabic term that occurs in the Quran and may also mean a pathway, but a spiritual pathway. In a symbolic sense, the Sharia is the main pathway, the visible, external, public pathway for all Muslims, the highway for faith, not just the pathway. Whereas tariqa is a general term for a wide range of additional pathways of faith that Muslims may follow as they choose for personal spiritual growth. This does not exclude the Sharia, but it has more of an internal meaning and often can have a meaning of being involved in understanding and trying to learn about the mysteries of life and the universe. The greatest of all Sufi poets, and there are many great Sufi poets, was the Persian Muslim Jalaluddin Rumi, lived 1207 to 73 of the Common Era, whose life and work we will be introduced to in this project. Muslims are strongly devoted to their global ummah. In their daily salat prayer services, they pray all of them in the direction of Mecca, which means that the axis of focus is the center of a global circle drawing attention from 360 degrees. It is not a matter of looking eastward only, but from wherever one may be on earth. Indonesians and Chinese face westward. Worshippers in Turkey, Syria, Iraq, and Jordan face southward. Yemenis and Kenyans face north, while Canadians and Americans face eastward, generally. Throughout Islamic history, the exact geographic coordinates for Mecca have been carefully calculated for every location where formal prayers are performed. Nearly 1,000 years ago, a specialist in Islamic science, in astronomy, and in navigation came up with 16,000 different sites and their exact coordinates, which were correct, as I remember from my professor, who was a specialist in this at Dartmouth many years ago. No, I wasn't a student at Dartmouth, but I was there as a faculty visiting person, and this was a distinguished Muslim professor of science from Damascus. I think he said that they were correct within, 3 decimal points. That's pretty good, isn't it? Okay, I'm almost at the end of this part. Mosques have a point of focus toward Mecca called a Qibla, Q-I-B-L-A, which is marked by a niche in the wall of the mosque inside called a mihrab, M-I-H-R-A-B. And this is a place that shows the worshipers how to orient themselves together in rows. So you want to be in the direction of the mihrab, which is the direction of Mecca. One of Islam's major pathways, as has already been introduced, is performing the Hajj. And that is something which is just such a wonderful thing, which you will learn quite a bit about when you read the Art of Hajj in our series. I won't go into describing that right now, although I'll mention Venetia Porter, the author, in a little while. In addition to the Hajj proper, Muslims may visit Mecca and perform prayers there any time outside the official Hajj season. Such a devotional visit is known as an umrah, U-M-R-A-H, which is considered to be a lesser visitation. Although not required, an umrah is of genuine spiritual value and practiced by many Muslims, a visit, a pious visit. But it does not satisfy the Hajj requirement, which would be during the Hajj month. A third category of devotional journey or pathway is ziyara, Z-I-Y-A-R-A, which literally means visit, a spiritual visit, a pilgrimage type of visit, but you don't use the word pilgrimage, which in the sense of Hajj for this. That would be the official Hajj, but visit as a spiritual pathway and visit. Ziyaras are not required, although making one to Medina in Arabia, not Mecca, but Medina, which is very important historically, to visit the Prophet's tomb is a beloved practice with large numbers of participants. Muslims make ziyaras to holy places throughout the Islamic world, particularly saint shrines. No required formal rituals are performed, although there are varied customs and tradition that may be followed. All right, I'm ending this part of it, and let me just give you some numbers information about Muslims. The developing Islamic tradition and civilization in many parts of the world, the Ummah, starting in the Arabian Peninsula and then in the surrounding regions, from the Atlantic Ocean in the west across the northern half of Africa to Central Asia and on to South and Southeast Asia. Indonesia has the largest national Muslim population. The numbers of Muslims total about 1.57 billion today in the world. Muslims today make up the second largest religious community in the world. Christianity has about 2.3 billion at least right now, and that's quite a few. From Egypt to Indonesia, Muslims today share certain fundamental principles and practices, but they do actually express their religious beliefs in a wide variety of ways. Let me just, and I know it's getting a little bit late, so I want to just mention the other ones, and please look at the descriptions of the 4 other texts. Muhammad, a very short introduction. It's written in the program book there. The story of the Quran, its history and place in Muslim life. Rumi, poet and mystic, selections from his writings. And The Art of Hajj by Venetia Porter. All of these will be, I think, delightful for you to read and to discuss especially. But let me end by talking a bit about Francis E. Peters, The Children of Abraham, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. Now, the religious beliefs of the pre-Islamic Arabs included the veneration of stones, wells, trees, and sacred precincts connected with individual tribes' origins. Allah was known as the High God among polytheistic pre-Islamic Arabs, but not as the only God. And this is what Muhammad, with his having been inspired and made a prophet, brought to the area, and this was the beginning of Islam. And so much of it refers to the biblical patriarch Abraham, who Muslims believe, with his son, built the Kaaba, the central shrine in Mecca, that it was Abraham's family that was involved with that. We don't find that in the Bible, but we do find that in the Arab traditions. And so this is a very serious identification with things Abrahamic way back, but it wasn't the son that we think of in connection with the development of Judaism. And who would that be? Jacob? Jacob. Yeah. Who would it be then? Isaac? Yeah, Isaac. And but it's still Abraham going down like this. Very nice when you get into this and begin to look at it and see how the Quran articulates it. It's really a good read, and it helps us to appreciate and enjoy the notion of the Abrahamic faiths. Okay. The Quran declares Jews and Christians to be the people of the book, meaning the Bible, but the Quran also presents itself as the final and complete message of Allah. Allah informs Muslims in Surah 3, verse 110, "Ye are the best of peoples, evolved for humankind, enjoining what is right, forbidding what is wrong, and believing in Allah. If only the people of the book had faith, it would have been best for them." Some of them are believers, but most of them are sinful. While Muslims share many of the same basic beliefs and values as do Jews and Christians, Islam also sees itself and its adherents as the one true practitioner of Allah's way. There are people from the other two who may have something similar, and one finds this in the whole family of Abraham in certain ways, here and there. The Children of Abraham is a historical and conceptual survey of the Abrahamic traditions, whose author, Francis Peters, is one of today's leading scholars in this comparative knowledge, and he's very much appreciated. This is a new edition, and he's rewritten the book, as he says in his preface, which you will enjoy reading if you haven't yet. It's a mini textbook of the Abrahamic religions, addressing briefly but accurately all of their basic beliefs and practices. Questions such as these are raised. How do Scripture and tradition relate to one another in the three? What does worship of God mean in each of the three faiths? How does it compare across the three faiths, and how is it different within each of them? What have renunciation and aspiration and thinking and talking about God meant in the three traditions, given their divergent ways of understanding doctrine, theology, mystical meditation practices, and rational or philosophical methods of analysis and interpretation? This is a readily accessible book to thoughtful lay readers, and it includes a lot of things that probably most readers who have a good knowledge of their tradition, if it's Jewish, Christian, or Muslim, may not be aware of, particularly in the areas, and this is an area that Professor Peters has made available for general thoughtful readers, quite a bit about philosophy and theology and difficult, advanced ways of thinking. And that's something that I personally think can be a challenge to a discussion group unless there's somebody who can help them with this. I have read the book 5 or 6 times now, and I've loved reading it, but I have a background in philosophy and theology and in Islamic studies and so on. I don't have a degree in Jewish studies, but I do in Christian studies 4 years after college, and that's familiar to me. But it's still challenging to me. Oy vey. Or is it Oy vey Maria, to make it Abrahamic, you know? But anyway, come together, you know, sort of thing. But that wasn't original with me, but I've always loved it. I heard it from someone else, a friend, but about a Catholic lady and a Jewish man that were talking to their priest and their rabbi about could they get married, and they had a meeting like that. And at the wedding, the rabbi said, Oy vey Maria. That's really quite nice, I think. But anyway, so there are some challenges here, and I think, though, that we're lucky to have Professor Peters' description and documentation and history of these issues. Let me just give you one example that I remember. When I was in college as a philosophy major, I took a course in Western civilization. The professor was wonderful, and he excited all of us, a large class of 200-300 people, the lecture part of it was. And he got to the High Middle Ages, the time of Thomas Aquinas, and he told us, because we had already looked at Aristotle earlier in Plato, he told us that St. Thomas Aquinas baptized Aristotle. That is, he rendered his teachings available